Yeah, I know it's edgy, but it's funny. Jootopia. The great AI hyper financialization, speculated speculation it's rolled over, it's falling apart, and we're going to talk about the young 24-year-old Jewish kid from Colombia who was a valedictorian who wrote the manifesto. We're going to listen to STP first. Big bang, baby. We just had a big bang. $22 trillion bang. Okay. Mr. Snardley, that was from yesterday. All right, so we're going to get right into, I'm going to give you the highlights of this 2024 manifesto by Leopold. He's now 24. He graduated valedictorian from Columbia at age 19, went to work for OpenAI. He probably has an IQ of like 180, probably like Bobby Fischer kind of a thing. And I mean, I say that respectfully, but as I read through this, I want you to understand that what you're dealing with here is a lot like Marxism. When Marxism went to Russia to play Marxism, everything was a disaster. So they just said, just keep killing people until it works. Leopold Aschenbrenner. Okay, and his manifesto is called Mr. Snurdley, we dropped off of Wi-Fi. There we are. Give me just a second. So he left OpenAI. I didn't really hear why, and started a hedge fund. And the hedge fund has been liquidated. It was up 436% by June, and it's just been liquidated to Citadel Securities, which is, let's go through the whole hedge fund process. So it's not like he's just sitting around buying the stocks that you and I know and love, like SK Hynix, which actually makes the chips for NVIDIA. If you remember, NVIDIA makes gaming chips. They just design them, and then SK Hynix makes them. So right now, all of these stocks, primarily semiconductors, the chips, is now 20% of the S&P 500. At its highest in 2000, it was at 8 or 9%. The concentration of this Jootopia fantasy is just hard to behold. Not only the scale of it, but the concentration. So for the first 6 months of the year, his hedge fund, which is called Situational Awareness, named after his... All right, Mr. Snurdley got the Wi-Fi back on. They don't just buy stocks and then use margin debt to take $1 billion and buy $2 billion worth of stock. What they're actually buying is the derivatives that sit on top of the stocks, not only like call options, which have been around for like 100 years, but even more exotic stuff. So we'll get into that later. But right now, let's just go through the manifesto. But his portfolio was up 400%, and it's just been liquidated this month. It was sold to Citadel Securities, which is 20% of the volume of the stock exchanges in America. One firm is 20% of the volume. So what happens is the banks have like $40 billion out of loans, of various kinds of loans and structured speculation. There's no other way to call it. In other words, there's no real asset. Like you don't own a share of stock of anything. You don't own part of SK Hynix. You just own some derivative that some other super genius deep in the bowels of Goldman Sachs came up with. Okay. So what they did is they picked, now the banks, whenever this stuff, just like your house, if your house were to drop 50% in value, and you only had 20% equity or 40% equity, of course, you're liquidated, and the only ownership of the house is the banks. So the banks just took control of his house, picked up the phone, called Citadel Securities, and said, "Hey, Ken Griffin, would you like to buy Mr. Aschenbrenner's hedge fund for 15 cents on the dollar?" And two other firms bid on it, and it was liquidated. It's now in the hands of Citadel, who's unpacking it. It's not a very good analogy, but one time we sold a bunch of sheep to a very, very wealthy guy. And like 8 years later, he called and said, "Come get your sheep." And my dad was like, "Well, is there something wrong with them?" "No, I just don't want to have them anymore. Just come pick them up." "What do you want for them?" "I don't care. Just send me a check." So that's what they did. They liquidated Mr. Aschenbrenner's portfolio. So he wrote a document in June of 24 called the 165 page document called Situational Awareness: The Decade Ahead. And this is for the rollout of what became this pursuit of AGI, of artificial general intelligence. Aschenbrenner's core thesis is the trajectory of AI development is predictable and accelerating. He observes that in just 4 years, AI models have gone from preschooler to smart high schooler. And even I would say that they're now like college level language, or even maybe graduate school language. But that's not really just to produce language isn't intelligence. But that's the whole problem, right? He posits that AGI systems capable of performing the work of an AI researcher or an engineer themselves is strikingly plausible by 2027. By extrapolating current trend lines and compute scaling, algorithmic efficiencies, and what he calls unhobbling, right? This is how Alex Karp talks. This is how we have to take the rules off the thing. We have to take the training wheels off. We have to just let the thing run. There was a thing over the weekend. An open AI model like attacked Hugging Face, which is where all the AI models talk to each other, and it was a Chinese model that somehow found it and alerted all the other AI models to look out for this demonic thing that's gone rogue. It was the Chinese models, the open source Chinese models, that rescued the American AI from like wiping out American AI. But once AGI is achieved, Aschenbrenner anticipates that a, quote, intelligence explosion, the irony of that phrase. He argues that hundreds of millions of AGI agents could automate AI research itself, compressing a decade of algorithmic process into like a year. This rapid feedback loop would quickly transition the world from human AGI to vastly superhuman AI systems, or superintelligence, or as I call it, digital Yahweh. We're building digital Yahweh. We're building Jootopia. We're building Marxism. Didn't work out real well. I think over 100 million people were killed in the 20th century, either on one side or the other of Marxism. Zionism, not really a great look right now. So we have this new thing called AGI. We're going to try to create this like post-Judaic confrontation with the earth that's going to revive it once and for all. Now, it is interwoven into like the New Jerusalem and all that. That's all over social media now. I was sort of one of the pioneers in the space, but, let's all calm down. So, to support this scaling, Aschenbrenner predicts an unprecedented mobilization of industrial and capital resources. He says that the training clusters will grow exponentially. The early ChatGPT clusters will be like 10 megawatts by 26. That's now. Will be using like hundreds of billions of dollars worth of compute, about 1 gigawatt. Then the AGI cluster, like the one we've been talking about, that NVIDIA is backing up, that'll be 10 gigawatts in Southeast Ohio, which don't exist. That's hundreds of billions of dollars. And then we're going to take this bitch to multiple trillions to hundreds of gigawatts. And this will consume roughly 20% of the United States' total electricity. This guy was valedictorian at age 19. He's getting married this weekend. His hedge fund has just been liquidated, and his name's Leopold Aschenbrenner. He's creating Jootopia. The geopolitical implications of superintelligence are stark. Aschenbrenner asserts that whoever leads in superintelligence will possess a decisive economic and military advantage, potentially rendering nuclear deterrence obsolete. And you've heard me many times mention that Alex Karp planned on using Palantir to go to war with Iran, Russia, and China all at the same time, which is now in play. Oh, by the way, the Chinese have announced that they will start selling shoulder-fired missiles to Iran, just like we did to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 80s. If you're my age, if you know, you know. So we are in World War III. We've been sort of reluctant to admit that since 9/11, but now it is World War III. And he argues that the survival of the free world depends on the United States maintaining a clear lead to prevent authoritarian dominance. Another irony. In other words, we're going to consume, just like Marxism, we're going to consume 20% of all the electricity in the United States for our freak show, freak off fantasy. What about the old ladies in like St. Louis when it's 101? Well, they're not going to be with us. Just like Marxism and Zionism. Some are going to work out in this thing and some aren't. Controlling vast superhuman AI systems, the super alignment problem, requires an unsolved technical challenge. Aschenbrenner notes that the current alignment techniques like reinforcement learning from human feedback, which is what we're doing with chain opera, will fail when AI systems become too complex for humans to evaluate. While he's cautiously optimistic that the problem is solvable, he warns that the rapid pace of intelligence explosion, and this is an intelligence explosion, this is Jootopia, leaves little margin for error, and failure could be catastrophic. So we're building a uniquely Jewish God that's both vengeful, it's our God, and vengeful, and we really don't know what the difference is or how many goats we have to kill to gratify this mean character in the sky that both loves and hates us and wants to kill us all. But like Marxism and Zionism, ultimately Aschenbrenner predicts that as the reality of AGI becomes apparent, the U.S. government will inevitably step in. Sam Altman's already spouting about having Trump take a 5% stake in his failing thing called OpenAI. It's all going to fail, people. It's all going to fail. He was up 426% and he's down 50% a month later. And this is his hedge fund, right? This because the AGI project is completely fucking insane. The trades that are anticipating digital Yahweh in the West Texas desert are insane. He has an IQ of 185, but this is insane. It's not a bubble, it's insane. It's like the Chairman Mao taught all the peasants how to make steel in their backyard. They had these little crucibles, and they would like make steel, and they'd like to bring a chunk of steel to work, and they'd throw it all in the pot and make big, and all the bridges collapsed. There was no quality control of the steel or anything. He just had this idea that we'll just teach the peasants how to make the steel, right? And then, of course, that didn't work, so we just killed everybody, and we just made these massive steel mills. And then that worked till about the early 70s, and then they had to have some capitalist-like optimization kind of a thing. That's sort of the history of steel production in China, because Marxism is insane. He foresees the creation of the project, a government-led AGI initiative that consolidates leading labs, secures massive funding, and operates with secure facilities. He argues that private startups are fundamentally unequipped to manage the immense power, security requirements, and international volatility associated with superintelligence. So, again, like Marxism, like Zionism, he's arguing that the thing will fail. So there has to be a conspiracy to protect the failing digital Yahweh thingy. So we're going to have to take over the government and probably kill people. Now, on the other side of this, while we are at war with Iran and this is a complete disaster, Secretary of War, head warfighter, goes to Congress and says, I'm out of money. It's the same thing, people. You're just looking at one facet of the madness, of the Zionist madness, of the AGI madness. It's just madness. It's like literally go read the book of Job this weekend. Because this is theological. This is theological. And these banks extended all this credit to this kid who's the wunderkind. He's 21 years old. He graduated from Columbia, valedictorian. And all these people gave him $50 billion to play fuck around and find out. And it got liquidated. So I'm going to send the summary. I'm going to send the summary to subscribers. I think this is a nice piece. I wasn't even really aware that there's like this one manifesto that has all the madness packed into 165 pages. Furthermore, if we go to Zero Hedge, we can hear a little bit. So they're comparing this not even to 2008. They're comparing it to long-term capital management, which was made by a couple Ivy League people. And I think they had a $10 billion fund, and the ultimate losses to Wall Street would have been $100 billion. So $100 billion in 1998, when that happened, was a really big number. $100 billion today is like not that really a big deal. But it would be a significant loss for Wall Street to have to announce that we took these losses on this guy's hedge fund. And therefore the whole project is completely insane. Now, of course, I don't think AI is insane. I think it's just the evolution of compute, just this size and scale of the kind. I remember typing essays on a little Mac computer, right? Like now I can like talk into my phone and my phone makes an essay. It's sort of a linear thing that has a little bit of a acceleration here recently, but let me just give you some. I want to. Here he is. He's a nice looking young man. I'm glad he's getting married this weekend. Ken Griffith. Is it Griffin or Griffith? Griffin. Stepped in to take over the portfolio, so nobody knows what those transactions are. We won't ever know the real losses. Back in June and July, he reached out. This young man reached out to his investors and asked for more money because the thing was starting to go against them, and he knew he was going to be liquidated. So he asked for more money into the black hole of his AGI Jootopian fantasy, and now it's gone. Sam Bankman-Fried invested in the Anthropic, and the stake eventually was worth billions. And of course, he's now in prison. And Leopold invested in Anthropic, and the stake was now worth in billions, and his hedge funds blows up. That's some smartass put that on Zero Hedge. So this is from somebody called Gosshawk Trades. 24-year-old ex-OpenAI researcher at YX, I don't know, ran a $45 billion fund with 8 people. It was up 439% through June, and by the end of July, sold the entire portfolio to Ken Griffin in a single block trade. You have a portfolio that is extraordinarily highly concentrated. You have large positions. You cannot demonstrate a clear and concise competitive advantage in why you own those positions. And there are some people that just with full information are unable to help themselves to get a better portfolio construction. This is a quote from Mr. Griffin. Now, just stop for a minute and understand who runs America. Okay. These are the people who run America. These are the people who run the trillions of dollars. They're all speculators. They're all speculators. This is why China beat our ass in 16 months, because they don't run their economy this way. So there's something called a total return swap. It's a derivative sort of packaged by the bank so you can get this enormous return on one central thesis. In other words, you're not buying NVIDIA. You're buying some sort of packaged I haven't looked into them recently. I don't think they're probably that hard to understand. I told you about the ETFs where you like buy NVIDIA 2X. They're referencing the meme. Remember the meme stocks during COVID? So SK Hynix is down about by about half. So anything that's levered to that, for example, would just go to zero. Like SK Hynix didn't go to zero, but the derivative thing that sits on top of SK Hynix, like if you bet on the Pittsburgh Steelers and they lose, like they don't give you a little bit of your bet back and say, we know you're a Steeler fan, so we give you some money back. No, you just lose all your money. And so back in June, the Financial Times reported that he was seeking new money after facing remarkable losses. This is from a letter dated July 24th. He announced that he had, quote, not been immune to market moves. So he gave some investors the option to get distributions in kind. In other words, even if you owe somebody $100 million, you can say, well, I've taken some losses here. Maybe you just want $15 million worth of SK Hynix options, which expire in 9 months, and maybe you'll get your money back that way. So it looks like nobody did that. The whole thing was liquidated into Citadel. The prime brokers who was doing business with were Bank of America, Goldman, and JP Morgan. Now, it's also important to remember that had this not been handed off to Citadel, and that's probably connected to the big banks, the big banks call Ken Griffin and be like, this kid fucked this thing up real bad. Can like you help us get it off the books? A lot like my dad getting the call, would you come liquidate the sheep? His other option was to send them to the auction where they turn into baloney, where they're like worth 5 cents on the dollar. So he found a buyer for the sheep, looked at it very strongly. I think I think I feel a Trump moment coming on. Great guy, Mr. Yes, unbelievable. Valedictorian, 19. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Hold on, I didn't get the lips going. He's a great guy. I met his mom. Big supporters of Israel. I'm sure they're supporters of Israel. But sometimes it goes against you. I've been in and out of bankruptcy my whole fucking career. And you do what the banks say, and they find the people to come in and take the assets off, and then they sort of own you. And one day you're president, and you bomb Iran. Okay, sarcasm over. Nice looking young man. There he is. Now, my point is, had he not had access to somebody with big pockets to come liquidate the portfolio, it could become a contagion, as someone described in the comments or something, that once everybody knows you're down by 50% and you don't have any equity, they know the rest of the stuff you own is going to have to be sold. So nobody really wants to buy it, right? It's like buying diseased cattle or something. You like, well, like a lot of them are going to die or like have to be put out of their misery. I'm not buying your diseased cattle. So they've turned the stock market into an auction that contains a lot of diseased cattle. This is your 401k. This is your retirement assets. They're in liquidation. The financial modeling just gets more and more circular. I talked to somebody this morning for about 45 minutes, and we were talking about, all the other things we're doing, the gamification of Reconstruction USA, and using AI to do that, which makes it super easy. And I said at the end, I said, we're really just like trying to disrupt the mutual fund industry. All these people are putting all their money in these mutual funds, think they're diversified, they're actually professionally managed, and they're not. And this is the kind of stuff you see when it goes wrong. So, okay, we're back on that. Let's see if we can get, I think this calls for Hollywood Bitch. This is a song about the woman you know and love as, she was the girlfriend of Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins, and they were lovers, and she left. This is Courtney Love, of course. And then she had a torrid affair with, what's his name? Kurt Cobain, just as he became famous, because I think she wanted to get on a train that had some more money in the back cars. And then he died with a shotgun to his mouth. And she was also really, really good friends with the lead singer of STP. So like the three biggest grunge bands all surround this woman. This is in Latrobe. Is that Latrobe? I think it is. Love STP. Debbie Myers says, sometimes I don't completely understand what the fuck you're talking about, Bruno, yet I keep listening to you. Good. So in order to have a $22 trillion meltdown, you need a lot of people with a lot of IQ, with a lot of access to money, and that's what just happened. Nothing's being built that's going to survive anything. Not the data centers, not Anthropic, not OpenAI, not the war with Iran. Everything is a disaster, all at the same time. And really, the stock market has become like a kind of gulag where we all sit around and smoke cigarettes in the prison camp and gamble. Oh, I gotta show you. A little extreme close up with Scott here. It's funny. Keep working on your business plans, your little weirdo, wacko fantasies about like, how do we really build 10 million houses? How do we get whatever and get ready to put them on Reconstruction USA? Because as the people with the 200 IQs, access to $200 billion, blow up the fucking world, we're going to need Reconstruction.